They saw a rain-soaked woman in a cheap coat and deemed her unworthy of even looking at their dress. They had no idea she was about to buy their entire world. The rain was relentless, a cold gray sheet that washed all the color from the city. It clung to my cheap raincoat and dripped from the ends of my hair, pooling on the pristine marble floor of the boutique. I knew I was leaving a trail of city grime in this temple of high fashion, and a small, apologetic part of me wanted to shrink into myself. The other part, the part that was here for a reason, squared my shoulders and ignored the disapproving click of my worn-out boots against the polished stone. The air inside Éclat smelled of money, a quiet, confident scent of leather, lilies, and some subtle perfume that probably cost more than my monthly rent. Everything was minimalist, displayed like art in a gallery. A single handbag on a pedestal, a pair of shoes illuminated by a soft spotlight. And in the center of it all, under a delicate chandelier that dripped crystal light, was the dress. It was the reason I'd come. The reason I'd stepped out of my comfortable, unassuming world and into this lion's den. It wasn't just a dress. It was a ghost. A shimmer of silver and moonlight spun into fabric, with tiny star-like crystals scattered across the bodice. It looked like a captured constellation. It was exactly the kind of thing Daniel would have loved. He would have seen it in a window, dragged me inside despite my protests, and his eyes would have lit up with that boyish excitement he never lost. "Ellie," he'd have whispered, "it was made for you, for my star." A familiar ache bloomed in my chest. Today was our anniversary, our 5th. It was supposed to be our first as parents. But Daniel was gone, and so was our baby. All I had left were the memories and the staggering, almost obscene amount of money his genius had left behind. Money I never touched. Money that felt like blood money, a poor substitute for the life we were supposed to have. I still lived in our small apartment, still drove our old car, still wore the simple clothes I always had. It was easier to pretend that he was just on a long business trip, that the tech empire he built wasn't really mine now. "Can I help you?" The voice was as sharp and cold as the glass displays. I turned. A woman who looked as if she were sculpted from ice stood with her arms crossed. Her hair was pulled back in a severe, glossy bun, not a single strand out of place. Her lips were a slash of perfect crimson, and they were curled into a faint but unmistakable sneer. Her eyes, a pale, calculating blue, raked over me once, from my dripping hair, down my $20 raincoat to my scuffed boots. The appraisal took less than a second, and in that second, she had judged, tried, and convicted me. "Yes," I said, my voice a little hoarse. I cleared my throat. "The dress, in the center. I'd like to see it." She didn't move. A perfectly manicured eyebrow arched a fraction of an inch. "That is a couture piece, from our new collection." She said the words slowly, as if I might not understand their meaning, as if I'd wandered in looking for the clearance rack. "I understand," I said, keeping my voice steady. The old Ellie would have apologized and run out of the store, crimson with embarrassment. But the old Ellie died with Daniel. "I'd like to try it on." A small, humorless smile touched her lips. "I'm afraid that's not possible. We have a waiting list for a viewing. And of course, there's the matter of suitability." Her gaze flickered over me again, this time with even more pronounced disdain. The message was clear. I was not suitable. My rain-soaked, grief-worn exterior was an insult to her pristine world. I felt a flash of hot anger, but I pushed it down. Daniel always told me my greatest strength was my calm. "Let them underestimate you, Ellie," he'd say with a wink. "It's more fun that way." "Suitability," I repeated, tasting the ugly word. "What exactly does that mean?" "It means," she said, finally taking a step closer, her heels clicking like tiny hammers of judgment, "that this piece is for a very specific clientele. It's an investment, a statement." I looked from her icy face to the dress. It shimmered, impossibly beautiful, a promise of a night that would never be. a dance I would never have, but I could wear it for him, for us, just for one night. I could sit in our empty apartment wearing a constellation and feel a little closer to him. I have the money, I said quietly, though I had no idea what it cost. It didn't matter. It could cost $1 million, and it wouldn't make a dent. The saleswoman actually laughed. It wasn't a real laugh, just a short, sharp puff of air through her nostrils. I'm sure you do, dear, but some things are not just about money. They are about taste, about pedigree, about being the kind of person who belongs in a dress like this. And then she delivered the killing blow. She took another look at the shimmering silver creation, then back at me, her expression one of utter revulsion. She leaned in as if sharing a secret, though her voice was loud enough for the other two silent staff members to hear. Frankly, she sniffed, her nose wrinkling as if I smelled bad, you are unworthy of even looking at this dress. The words hung in the air, glittering and cruel. Unworthy. The breath caught in my throat. All the grief, all the pain of the last year, all the crushing loneliness, it all coalesced into a single sharp point of agony in my chest. She wasn't just insulting my clothes, she was insulting my very existence. She was confirming the tiny dark voice in my head that whispered I was nothing without Daniel, that I didn't deserve the life he left me. For a moment, I just stood there, the rain from my coat forming a small, dirty puddle at my feet. The saleswoman, whose name tag I could now see read Claudia, watched me, a smug, triumphant look on her face. She was waiting for me to shatter, to cry, to run away. And I did shatter. But she had no idea what happened when I broke. I didn't crumble into dust. I fractured into 1,000,000 sharp, glittering pieces of ice. The grief didn't vanish, but it froze. It hardened into something cold, clear, and immensely powerful. The sadness was replaced by a sudden, chilling calm, the kind of calm Daniel had when he was about to close a deal that everyone else thought was impossible. I met Claudia's gaze. The pity and hurt in my own eyes were gone, replaced by something she couldn't read, something that made her perfect little smile falter for just a second. I slowly reached into my handbag, my movements deliberate. Her eyes flicked down, probably expecting a crumpled debit card. Instead, I pulled out my phone. I turned my back to her, shielding the screen with my body, and dialed a number I knew by heart. It rang once. "It's me," I said, my voice low and steady, devoid of all emotion. "I need you to do something. There's a boutique on 5th called Eclat. I want you to buy it. The whole thing. I don't care what it costs, just get it done, and make sure the sale is final before they close today." There was a quiet click as I ended the call and slipped my phone back into my bag. I turned to face Claudia, whose face was a mask of incredulous contempt. The two other sales assistants, previously pretending to be busy arranging silk scarves, were now frozen, their eyes wide. The entire store was silent save for the soft hum of the air conditioning and the drumming of the rain against the large plate glass windows. "Finished with your little phone call?" Claudia sneered, her voice dripping with venom. "Calling your imaginary rich boyfriend to come rescue you? Some fantasies are just sad." I didn't answer. Instead, I walked over to a severe-looking white leather armchair that was probably meant more for aesthetics than comfort. I took off my damp raincoat, folded it neatly, and placed it on the floor beside the chair before sitting down. I crossed my legs, my worn boot looking even more out of place against the stark white of the furniture. I met her gaze, my expression perfectly neutral. "I'm waiting," I said simply, her perfectly painted face contorted with rage. "Waiting for what? Security? Because that's who I'm calling in 1 minute if you don't remove yourself from my store." "Your store," I repeated softly, letting the words hang in the air. A ghost of a smile touched my lips, but I quickly suppressed it. She took it as a challenge. "Yes, my store. I am the senior manager here. I am responsible for its reputation, its clientele, and the protection of its merchandise from people like you." I leaned back in the chair, feigning a comfort I didn't feel. The chair was, as predicted, incredibly uncomfortable, but I wouldn't have let it show for anything. Inside, my heart was hammering against my ribs. This wasn't me. I was Ellie, the quiet librarian who organized charity bake sales and preferred old books to new clothes. But the woman Claudia had insulted wasn't just me. She had insulted Daniel's wife. She had passed judgment on the person he had loved more than anything. And that, I was discovering, was a line that could not be crossed. The man I had called was Arthur Davies, the executor of Daniel's estate. A man so precise and ruthlessly efficient, he made sharks look like goldfish. When I'd said, "Get it done," I knew it was as good as done. I just had to wait for the ripples to reach this pristine shore. 10 minutes passed, then 15. It was an eternity. Claudia stood with her arms crossed, tapping an expensive-looking stiletto on the marble. The other 2 employees kept shooting me nervous, almost fearful glances before looking away. I could feel the tension in the room ratcheting up with every tick of the minimalist clock on the wall. I passed the time by looking at the dress. It was still the most beautiful thing I'd ever seen. I imagined Daniel's face, the way his smile would have crinkled the corners of his eyes. The thought was like a warm current in the icy river of my resolve. I was doing this for him. Right, that's it. Claudia finally snapped, pulling out her own phone. "I'm calling security. You can explain your loitering to them." Just as her thumb was about to press the screen, a phone rang in a back office. The sound muffled, but insistent. A slender, nervous-looking man in a well-tailored suit hurried from a back room to answer it. Jean-Pierre, according to his name tag. The general manager, I presumed. Claudia lowered her phone, an irritated look on her face. We could see Jean-Pierre through a pane of frosted glass in the office door. We saw him pick up the receiver. We saw him listen, his posture casual at first. Then slowly he straightened up. His back went ramrod straight. He brought a trembling hand to his forehead, wiping away imaginary sweat. He began nodding, short, jerky motions. His face, visible in profile, had gone as white as the chair I was sitting in. He said nothing, just listened, his knuckles white where he gripped the phone. Claudia was watching him, a frown creasing her brow. "What is wrong with him?" she muttered, more to herself than to anyone else. Finally, Jean-Pierre placed the receiver back on the cradle with the careful precision of someone handling a live bomb. He stood frozen for a moment, staring at the wall. Then he turned and pushed the office door open. He walked out onto the sales floor like a man walking to his own execution. His eyes scanned the room, wide with a dawning, panicked understanding. They passed over the other assistants, over Claudia, and then they landed on me, on the woman in the scuffed boots and simple clothes, sitting in his $1,000 armchair. He froze. "Jean-Pierre," Claudia said, her voice sharp with impatience. "What was that about? Never mind, just deal with this situation, get her out." But Jean-Pierre didn't seem to hear her. He took a hesitant step towards me, then another. He looked as if he'd seen a ghost. His mouth opened, but no words came out. He swallowed hard, his Adam's apple bobbing in his throat. "Excuse me, miss." He finally managed to stammer, his voice a raw whisper. He completely ignored his furious senior manager. I've just been on the phone with the legal department from the parent corporation." He paused, looking from my calm face to Claudia's indignant one. He looked like he was about to be sick. "There's been a sale," he choked out. "An acquisition. It's immediate." Claudia's jaw dropped. "What? Sold? To whom? That's impossible. They would have told us." Jean-Pierre's eyes, filled with a horrified, dawning comprehension, flicked back to me. He looked down at the puddle my raincoat had left, then back up at my face. He looked at me as if he were seeing me for the first time. "They did," he whispered, his voice trembling. "They said the new owner is already on site, and she has instructions." The silence that followed Jean-Pierre's announcement was absolute. It was heavier and more profound than the quiet that had come before. Even the sound of the rain outside seemed to have been swallowed by the stunning, electric shock of his words. The new owner, already on site. Claudia's perfectly made-up face, which had been a mask of fury just moments before, now registered a slow, dawning horror. Her pale blue eyes, wide and disbelieving, darted around the empty boutique as if expecting a pinstripe-suited billionaire to step out from behind a mannequin. They swept past the other two assistants, past Jean-Pierre, and then finally they landed on me. Her mind worked furiously, trying to connect the dots, but the picture was too insane, too utterly impossible to comprehend. Her gaze flickered from my worn-out boots to my simple, makeup-free face, then back to my eyes. The sneer, the arrogance, it all dissolved, replaced by a confusion so profound it was almost comical. She opened her mouth, a small sputtering sound escaping her lips, but no words formed. I decided to help her. Slowly, deliberately, I stood up from the uncomfortable white chair. I picked up my raincoat from the floor, not bothering to shake it out, and draped it over my arm. Every eye in the room was fixed on me. My heart was still a frantic drum against my ribs, but on the outside, I projected a calm I hadn't known I possessed. I took a single step forward, the click of my boot heel echoing in the cavernous silence. "Jean-Pierre," I said, my voice even and clear. It cut through the tension like a knife. "Thank you for the update." He flinched as if I'd struck him. He gave a short, jerky nod, his eyes still wide with terror. "Madam," he began, his voice cracking. He didn't know what to call me. Claudia finally found her voice. It was a strangled whisper. No, it's not possible. You're lying. This is a joke, a prank." She looked at Jean-Pierre, her eyes pleading. "Tell me this is a prank." "The call came from Mr. Dubois himself," Jean-Pierre said, his voice flat with defeat. He was talking about the CEO of the entire parent corporation. "The wire transfer has cleared. The transaction is complete. As of 3 minutes ago, Eclat and all its assets belong to—" He trailed off, looking at me with a mixture of awe and sheer panic. "Eliana Vance," I finished for him, saying my full name aloud for what felt like the first time in an eternity. It sounded foreign, like the name of a stranger. The name on the legal documents. Not Ellie. Daniel's Ellie. Eliana Vance. The owner. Claudia's face went chalk white. The name clearly meant nothing to her, but the reality of the situation was finally crashing down around her with the force of a tidal wave. The woman she had just belittled, the woman she had deemed unworthy, was now her boss. The ultimate boss. I took another step towards her. She instinctively took a step back, her expensive stiletto catching on the plush rug, making her stumble. The illusion of her icy superiority was shattered, revealing the frightened, small-minded woman beneath. "You said this dress," I began, gesturing towards the shimmering silver creation in the center of the room, "was for a specific clientele. You said it was about pedigree, taste." I let the words hang in the air, her own ammunition now turned against her. "Tell me, Claudia, now that I own the boutique, the building it's in, and by extension, your employment contract, do you think I've suddenly become suitable enough?" A wave of crimson flooded her pale cheeks. Humiliation. It was a raw, ugly thing to witness, but I felt no pity, only a cold, hard satisfaction. She had wanted to make me feel small, worthless. She had prodded a sleeping bear of grief and woken up a dragon. I didn't know," she stammered, wringing her hands. The perfectly composed manager was gone. In her place was a groveling subordinate. "Madame Vance, I'm so sorry. It was a misunderstanding. I was just trying to protect the brand's image. I had no idea—" "You had no idea I had money," I cut in, my voice dangerously soft. "That's what you mean. You judged me based on my clothes. You decided my worth in the 10 seconds it took for me to walk through that door. You weren't protecting a brand, Claudia. You were indulging your own petty prejudice. You were being a bully, I walked past her, stopping directly in front of the dress. Up close, it was even more breathtaking. The tiny crystals winked at me like distant stars. It really did look like it was made for me, for the me Daniel had seen. "I'll take this," I said, turning to face one of the other sales assistants, a young girl who looked like she might faint. "Please have it boxed. No, wait. Don't box it." I glanced around the empty, opulent store. My store. A bitter taste filled my mouth. Daniel would have hated this. He would have hated what this woman had driven me to do, this grand, empty gesture. The boutique was just a building. The dress was just fabric. It couldn't bring him back, but it could deliver a message. "Claudia," I said, turning back to her. Her face was a mess of fear and desperate hope. She thought she was going to get a slap on the wrist, a stern warning. She thought my little display of power was over. "You're right about one thing," I continued, my voice hardening. "This is a place with very specific standards, and as the new owner, I'm going to set them. Our first new standard is that every single person who walks through that door, regardless of what they are wearing or how much money they appear to have, will be treated with dignity and respect. Because we are not just selling dresses, we are selling a dream, and everyone is worthy of dreaming." I let that sink in. Jean-Pierre was nodding vigorously, his face a mask of earnest agreement. The other assistants looked relieved. Claudia forced a watery, sycophantic smile. "Of course, Madame Vance, an excellent policy. I will ensure it's implemented immediately." "No," I said, my voice dropping to a whisper, cold and final. "You won't." I looked her directly in the eye, savoring the way her fake smile froze and crumbled. "You won't be implementing anything," I said. "Jean-Pierre, please escort Claudia to her office. She can clear out her personal belongings. I want her out of my building in the next 10 minutes. Her final paycheck and severance can be mailed to her." The gasp Claudia let out was sharp and ragged, a sound of pure shock. Her face, which had cycled through contempt, confusion, and fear, now settled on a look of utter disbelief. The color drained from her cheeks, leaving her crimson lipstick looking garish and clown-like. "Fired? You can't be serious." "I have never been more serious in my life," I replied, my voice devoid of any warmth. 10 minutes, Jean-Pierre." Jean-Pierre, who looked both terrified and immensely relieved, nodded stiffly. "Yes, Madame Vance, right away." He gestured awkwardly towards the back office. "Claudia, if you'll come with me." But Claudia wasn't moving. She was staring at me, her eyes blazing with a desperate, cornered fury. The groveling was over. The mask was off completely. "You're doing this because I hurt your feelings?" She spat, her voice rising in pitch. "Because I didn't recognize that you were some secret millionaire playing dress-up as a poor person? This is insane. I've given 5 years of my life to this company. I'm the best sales manager they have. You can't just throw me out on the street." "I can," I said calmly. "And I am. This isn't about my feelings, Claudia. It's about your character, or rather, the lack of it. You see, a person's true nature isn't revealed in how they treat their superiors. It's in how they treat those they believe are beneath them. And you," I said, taking a small step closer, forcing her to meet my gaze, "failed that test spectacularly. You didn't just try to humiliate me, you enjoyed it. That is a liability I will not have representing my brand." Her mouth opened and closed like a fish. She was floundering, searching for an argument, for a foothold, but there was none. She had built her world on a foundation of perceived status and power, and in a single phone call, I had demolished it. "Please," Jean-Pierre said gently, touching her arm. She flinched away from him. "Don't touch me!" she shrieked. She rounded on me one last time, her face twisted into an ugly sneer. "You'll regret this. You have no idea how to run a business like this. You'll run it into the ground, you pathetic, grief-stricken little widow." The word widow struck me like a physical blow. It was a low, cruel shot, meant to wound me where I was most vulnerable. For a split second, the icy calm threatened to crack, and I could feel the raw, howling grief trying to break through. I saw Daniel's face smiling in the hospital bed, telling me not to worry. I saw the empty nursery we had so lovingly prepared. The pain was so sharp, so immediate it almost buckled my knees. But then I looked at her, at this bitter, hateful woman, and I realized her words had no real power over me. My grief was mine. It was a sacred, terrible thing. She couldn't touch it. She couldn't understand it. All she had was petty spite. I didn't even flinch. I just held her gaze until she looked away, defeated. "Get her out," I said to Jean-Pierre, my voice as cold as a tombstone. This time, Claudia didn't resist. All the fight seemed to drain out of her at once. She allowed Jean-Pierre to guide her towards the back, a broken, shuffling figure. The other two sales assistants watched her go, their faces a mixture of shock and something that looked a lot like relief. I had the distinct impression Claudia's reign of terror had extended to her staff as well. When she was gone, a heavy silence descended on the boutique once more. I let out a breath I didn't realize I'd been holding. My hands were trembling slightly. The adrenaline was starting to fade, leaving a hollow, aching emptiness in its wake. What had I just done? I owned a boutique. I had just fired someone in the most dramatic way possible. This wasn't me. This was some character in a movie. The young assistant I had spoken to earlier approached me hesitantly. "Madame Vance? The dress?" she asked in a small voice. Her name tag read Amelia. "Right," I said, trying to pull myself together. "Yes, the dress. Don't box it. I'm going to wear it." Amelia's eyes widened. "Now?" "Yes, now." The decision was impulsive, born from the raw emotional chaos of the last hour. I didn't want to take this dress home to an empty apartment. I didn't want it to become another sad relic of a life that never was. I wanted to wear it. For Daniel. For me. Right now. "Of course," Amelia said, quickly recovering. "The main fitting room is this way. It's our largest. Can I get you anything? Champagne? Water?" "Water would be nice," I said, following her towards a pair of plush velvet curtains. The fitting room was larger than my entire living room. It was a private suite with soft carpeting, a chaise lounge, and a three-way mirror that seemed to go on for infinity. Amelia helped me out of my simple clothes, and then, with the reverence of a museum curator handling an ancient artifact, she brought in the dress. She held it up and it caught the light, a waterfall of liquid silver. Stepping into it was like stepping into a cold pool of moonlight. The fabric was weightless, cool against my skin. Amelia zipped it up, her touch light and professional. "There," she whispered, her voice full of awe. I turned to face the mirror, and for the first time in over a year, I didn't see a ghost. The woman staring back at me was a stranger. Her eyes were still sad, yes, etched with a grief that would likely never fully fade. But they weren't empty anymore. There was a fire in them, a spark of the fierce, defiant act I had just committed. The dress? Daniel was right. It clung to me as if it had been spun from my own skin. The silver fabric transformed the pale, tired woman I was into someone luminous, someone ethereal, someone worthy. Tears pricked my eyes, but for the first time, they weren't tears of pure sorrow. They were something more complex. I reached up and touched the cool glass of the mirror, my reflection's fingers meeting my own. "Oh, Daniel," I whispered, "if only you could see this." I spent a few moments just standing there, lost in the reflection, before Amelia gently cleared her throat. "Madame Vance? Is there anything else?" I turned away from the mirror. "Yes, Amelia. Please gather the other staff member, and Jean-Pierre. I need to speak with all of you out on the main floor." A few minutes later, I swept back out through the velvet curtains. Jean-Pierre and the two assistants were standing in a nervous little cluster, waiting for me. They stared as I approached, their expressions a mixture of awe and apprehension. The dress made no sound as I walked. I felt like I was floating. I stopped in front of them in the very spot where Claudia had told me I was unworthy. "First," I said, my voice steady, "I want to apologize for the drama of my introduction. It was not my intention to begin our professional relationship this way." "Not at all, madame," Jean-Pierre rushed to say. "We understand completely." "Good," I said with a small smile. "Now, for the reason I called you here. As of today, things are going to be different at Eclat. The policy I mentioned earlier about treating every customer with respect is effective immediately and is non-negotiable. But that's just the beginning. I believe the heart of any successful business is its people. So Jean-Pierre, I want you to immediately raise the base salary for all staff by 20%. Their jaws collectively dropped. Amelia let out a tiny squeak. "Furthermore," I continued, "I want to implement a new commission structure, one that rewards teamwork instead of competition. All commissions will be pooled and distributed equally amongst the sales staff at the end of each week. We rise and fall together." I was channeling Daniel now, his business philosophies, his belief in rewarding the people who did the work. It felt right. It felt like I was honoring him in a way that wasn't just about spending his money. "And finally," I said, looking at Jean-Pierre, "the position of senior manager is now vacant. I'd like to offer it to you." His eyes went wide with shock. "Me? But I'm the general manager." "And you'll continue to be," I said, "but you'll absorb Claudia's duties and her much larger salary effective immediately. I trust you'll be able to foster a more positive work environment." He was speechless, just nodding his head, his face flush with gratitude. I felt a genuine warmth spread through my chest. This felt good. This felt productive. Maybe this was how I could start to live again, not by hiding from Daniel's legacy, but by using it to do some good. "That's all for now," I said. "Thank you. You can all get back to—" My words were cut off by the chime of the boutique's front door. We all turned. A man was standing there, shaking a ridiculously expensive-looking umbrella onto the marble floor. He was tall, impeccably dressed in a dark tailored suit that probably cost as much as my old car. His hair was silver at the temples, and his face was sharp and aristocratic, but etched with lines of concern. When he saw me standing in the center of the store in the glittering dress, his eyes widened in surprise. It was Arthur Davies, Daniel's lawyer, the executor of his estate, the man I had called less than an hour ago. "Eliana?" he said, his voice a deep baritone filled with confusion. "What in God's name is going on? My office just got a call from the board of Dubois International. They're in a full-blown panic. They said you just executed a hostile takeover of their flagship brand, and that you're holding the staff hostage." The accusation hung in the air, so utterly absurd that I almost laughed. "Holding them hostage, Arthur?" I asked, a wry smile touching my lips. I gestured to Jean-Pierre and the two young women, who were staring at the formidable lawyer with wide, intimidated eyes. "Do they look like hostages to you?" Arthur's gaze swept over them, then back to me, taking in the constellation dress, the determined set of my jaw, and the complete transformation from the grieving, quiet woman he was used to dealing with. He ran a hand through his perfectly styled hair, his expression shifting from alarm to grudging admiration. "No," he conceded, a slow smile spreading across his face. "They look like they've just won the lottery. Eliana, what have you done?" "I bought a dress," I said simply, "and the store that came with it. It seemed like the most efficient way to handle a customer service issue." Jean-Pierre, emboldened by his promotion and the sheer surreality of the situation, stepped forward. "Mr. Davies, sir, Madame Vance has been nothing but revolutionary. She has given us raises, promotions, and a new sense of purpose. We are not hostages. We are inspired." Arthur looked genuinely impressed. He walked further into the boutique, his polished shoes silent on the marble. "Well, I can't say this is how I envisioned your first major business decision, but I'll be damned if it isn't effective. The board is in chaos. They think Daniel's quiet little widow has suddenly turned into a corporate raider." "Let them," I said, a newfound confidence surging through me. For the first time, the title Daniel's Widow didn't feel like a brand of sorrow. It felt like a legacy, a responsibility. Maybe it's time they learned that I'm more than just a name on a piece of paper. Arthur nodded, his expression serious now. "Indeed, but Eliana, this is a multi-million-dollar acquisition. It has consequences. Are you prepared for that?" Was I? An hour ago, I would have said no. An hour ago, I was just a woman trying to survive an anniversary. But standing here, in this dress that felt like armor, surrounded by people whose lives I had just tangibly improved, the answer was different. Daniel had built an empire, and I had let it lie dormant, a monument to my grief. But that wasn't what he would have wanted. He would have wanted me to use it, to shape it, to make it my own. "Yes," I said, my voice clear and strong, "I am." Just then, the front door chimed again. We all turned. A delivery man was struggling with a huge, ornate floral arrangement, a riot of white lilies, stargazers, and delicate silver-leafed eucalyptus. "Delivery for, the new owner of Eclat?" he read uncertainly from a card. I frowned in confusion. Arthur raised an eyebrow. "Not from me." The delivery man set the arrangement on a nearby counter. Tucked into the lilies was a small, cream-colored envelope. My name was written on it in a familiar, elegant script. My breath caught. It was Arthur's handwriting, but it wasn't from him. It was from a set of letters he had been instructed to give me. Letters from Daniel. One for every anniversary after he was gone. Arthur was supposed to have given this to me this morning, but I'd left before he had the chance. My hands trembled as I took the envelope. I opened it. Inside was a single card. "My dearest Ellie, my star. If you're reading this, it means I've missed another year. I'm sorry. I hope the pain is a little less sharp today. I hope you're remembering the good times. I know today is hard, so I wanted to give you a mission. Arthur has the details. It's a small, struggling foundation that helps young, unproven artists and designers get their start. The kind of people the world usually deems unworthy. I thought maybe you could help them, give them a chance, show them what it means to be seen. I know you've been hiding from the world, my love, but your light is too bright to keep hidden. It's time to shine again. Go buy yourself the most ridiculously beautiful dress you can find. Wear it for me. Wear it for you. And then go change the world. All my love, always. Daniel. Tears streamed down my face, silent and warm. They weren't tears of grief, but of profound, aching love and understanding. He knew me. He knew exactly what I would need. A purpose. A mission. He hadn't just left me his money, he had left me a roadmap back to myself. The dress, the store, the decision to help my new employees, it wasn't an impulsive, angry act. It was me, finally, unconsciously, following his last wish. I looked up, my vision blurry. Arthur was watching me with a gentle, knowing expression. Jean-Pierre and the others were looking on with quiet respect. "Amelia," I said, my voice thick with emotion, "do we have a record of every designer whose pieces we carry?" "Yes, of course, madame," she replied softly. "I want you to pull the files for all the new and emerging designers, the ones who are just starting out, the ones who are struggling to get noticed." I took a deep, steadying breath, the plan forming in my mind, clear and bright. "And Jean-Pierre, I want you to start renovating the second floor. We're turning it into a workspace, an incubator. We're going to create a new program here at Eclat." I looked around the beautiful, opulent store. My store. It wasn't just a place to sell expensive dresses anymore. It was going to be something more. We'll call it the Starlight Initiative, I declared, the name coming to me as if Daniel himself had whispered it in my ear. We're going to find young designers, the ones the rest of the fashion world has overlooked, the ones they deem unsuitable. We're going to give them funding, mentorship, and a space to create, and their very first collection will be featured exclusively right here on this floor. A slow, brilliant smile spread across Amelia's face. Jean-Pierre looked like he might actually cry with joy. Arthur just shook his head, a look of pure astonishment on his face. "A foundation disguised as a fashion boutique," he murmured. "Only Daniel would have come up with something so crazy, and only you could have pulled it off." I looked at my reflection in the dark glass of the front window. The rain had stopped, and the setting sun was breaking through the clouds, casting a golden light onto the wet pavement. I saw the woman in the silver dress, her face tear-streaked, but resolute. I saw the ghost of Daniel's smile reflected beside me. I was no longer just his widow, hiding from the world. I was the keeper of his flame. I was the unworthy woman who had bought a boutique to fire one person, but in doing so, had found a way to hire and lift up countless more. I had found my new purpose. The Éclat Boutique wasn't just a store anymore. It was a beginning, my beginning, and I was finally, truly worthy of it.